So we're looking at the 3D game kit. A couple things, actually I'll walk through here where I have kind of the basics to start with. I wanted to make sure that movement is possible, that I can rotate the camera as I would expect. So things like after I do the basic connection and load the game, make sure that I'm loading the game properly by checking if we're at the start of the scene, or the scene's called start, sorry. We'll wait for the start button to appear and then click it, and then we wait for Ellen to appear. And we assert at the end of this that we're at level 1. Now it's important that I put this in the one-time setup. If I'm trying to run one of these tests individually, say I'm running this break all boxes test, which I'm currently debugging, I want all of these things to be given regardless of what else has been run. And let's say I'm running a test and I keep the editor open, I keep the editor in play mode, and I want to run a test just by reconnecting and not restarting the entire game, then having this check will allow me to bypass if I'm already on level 1. So let's say the scene name comes back as level 1, none of this is going to run, and then we just continue on. I'm doing some simple things like testing movement inputs. First we, again, check for Ellen, and then we get her position. Actually, I remember I just wrote this as kind of a debug. I want to make sure where Ellen is in the first place, but so we have the original position of Ellen, and we save that as Ellen position, and then we're going to do some movements. We're going to walk in a square, essentially testing the horizontal and vertical axes plus positive and negative, and then we're going to check the position again, and if the position has changed, then the test is passed. Then we're going to assert the original position and the new position are not equal, and if they are, then we fail with an Ellen did not move. Now, so you'll see each of these individual tests kind of set up like this, where we check the initial condition, we perform a set of actions, and then we check the outcome. So the next test that I wrote is test camera movement. Can we move the camera? In this case, the camera movement is also bound to player input, so that can be done through the mouse. But in this case, actually, I found direct mouse input was not working, as you can see in this command here. But if I manipulate the X and Y axis directly, then the camera does move. And so we check the initial position, do the movement, check the final position, check that they're not equal. And then we check that the menu appears. We just press the pause button, check that the menu appeared, and press it again to exit the menu. This one is a little more complex. And actually, I'm going to change this in a second because I found an issue while testing my break all boxes. But there's a weapon, a staff in the level, and so first we check if the staff is active in the scene, and if it's true, then we continue on. If it's not true, then we don't need to do any of this, and actually we just assert that the melee attack is enabled. Now, if both of these fail, then I guess that's okay, and I don't need to change this method. But what I found below is that set object field value for this is if the staff is active, I'm moving Ellen to the staff, which triggers the command that I'll talk about again in a moment. So basically, we're moving Ellen using her transform component with a field or the property or field of position, and we're making that equal to get object position of the staff itself. And we're not doing a conversion. Now, typically this would be done in 2 lines so that it's easier to read, but I got kind of lazy here and I just wrote it all as an argument to the set object field value command. And then what we're going to do is kill everything. We're going to kill all of the enemies in this, and I thought this was pretty cool. Actually, this was another one of those tests that I just wanted to see if I could do something, but then I thought, actually, this is a pretty good test because I want to make sure for all of the cloned enemies that I put in the game that I can go to the enemy and kill it, and that it will no longer be active. Again, we're checking if we can attack, and then this is where I needed to fail this. So originally we moved to the staff. We're not going to do that. I tried to set the object field value of can attack, and I should have known I can't set this directly. It's a protected field. So I'm going to do this the proper way, which is to call the method on the component itself, which is set can attack. Let's fix the comments a bit here. And so we're going to copy this out. This works. And we're going to put this up into kill everything simple as well. And actually, I'm going to rename that to kill everything, because I actually had a much more convoluted approach to doing this, which is now what I'm doing for the break all boxes, which I'm currently debugging. So we're going to kill everything, and then we're going to break all boxes. So in the kill everything, you know, we check, can we attack? Otherwise, we call the method, and that's assuming we didn't run the get the weapon to enable attack in the previous test. And let's say I was just running this by itself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check for an object called chomper. And as there's going to be a lot of these, 20 something I think, in the level, this is always going to return the next one. Every time we kill one, it's going to check the next one. And you can see I have a command here, or a note saying maybe I had to check for whether or not the chomper is killed or alive, but I didn't get to that yet. It's not super important because I found that this works pretty well. And so you'll see a couple of things here. These are not built in, this is not a built-in GameDriver command, and neither is setObjectPosition, but because these require a few more arguments, but I found myself writing these out frequently enough so that below all of the tests, I wrote some additional methods which, you know, basically abstract that so that I don't need to do this each and every time. Now, setObjectFieldValue is the one that I used above, where we set the player position to that of the staff. And in this case, I'm actually going to pass it the hierarchy or the path of the object, and then the position, the vector3 position. And so we're doing that setObjectFieldValue of a property path with the Unity engine transform using the position field, and we're going to change that to whatever the vector3 that we're passing into this method is. And then the next one is actually moving close to an object. So I ran a couple of tests just to see how close do I need to be to an enemy or a box before I can hit it, and the answer is 1F. So basically on the X and Z position, I don't want to change Y because that would take me up or down through the floor. We're basically testing, here's the enemy, and I want to be close enough to it that I can hit it, but not on top of it, because that's going to cause some issues. And so I pass this the path of an object, and it's going to return a nearby position, which is close to that object. Okay, so a couple of steps here. And then the last thing that you'll see here is just a debug method that I use for getting all of the objects in the scene, and then I can output various properties of those objects. These are GameDriver's light objects, not the full representation in Unity, so that we're not duplicating everything in memory, but essentially looking at a couple of important properties of those objects so that we can use them, like the name and the path of those objects, the tag, the position, etc. But for now, we're not going to be using that. So with the kill all or kill everything, we're going to check for a chomper, and as long as there is a chomper, meaning that it's not false, this wait for object chomper, then we'll proceed to kill it, which is to get the destination, which is close to the object of chomper, right? And then we're going to set the target, and the target's important because we're actually looking at the target, which means I move to a position, and now I want to look at the target, in this case the chomper. And so first we're going to set Ellen's position to that which is close, and I could probably have written this a little bit cleaner, I guess, where I just go set object position Ellen and then close to object and then the chomper, so in one line. I like to separate it here so I kind of, you know, mentally see what it is I'm doing. And then I'm going to call the lookAt method. And this is a built-in Unity method on the transform component called lookAt, and we're going to pass it a vector3 of target, which in this case is the chomper. And then you'll notice some weights here, and this was something that took a couple of tries. If I didn't have the weights, then all of this happened at once, and the game actually does need a little bit of time to load. It's not so performant, even on my PC, which has like a 3080 and a whole lot of RAM and a really great processor. It doesn't happen instantly, so we need to give it a little bit of time. I could have used things in here like, you know, wait for objects to respawn or something like that, but I found just simple enough to use a couple of milliseconds of wait. And then it's simply fire. And because this is in a try block, which is not typical, but in this case, because we're actually expecting to fail to find the object at some point, and I didn't want to fail the test because the search or the wait for the object failed, we do this in a try catch block, but we do catch all exceptions, so we get clean output for this. And then at the end, we want to make sure that there's no more chompers, right? Basically saying, test that this is false, that there's no chompers. Otherwise, we throw an error message. And this is a really good test because let's say we fail to make one of the chompers destructible, or maybe it doesn't have its collision or collider implemented. And so the test will fail, leaving some chompers in place, but we won't be able to kill them. And we'll come back to this. This last one with break all boxes is a little tricky, and one that I'm still working on. And you can see it's quite a bit longer, where we do use the full object list, and then we test that, and then we're going to iterate over it to count the number of boxes. And there's reasons for this, which I'll come back to. But what it boils down to is the implementation of the game doesn't allow me to call the box directly. There's actually a number of objects where it goes destructibles, and then destructible box, and then destructible box again as a child of that object. So if I just count the number of objects called destructible box, I actually get twice the number of objects. And so there's going to be 44 here, but I want to iterate through them and break number 44, and then 42, and then 43, and then 42, and 41, etc. The reason why I'm not doing it the same way as with the chompers is that the boxes don't destroy themselves when you break them. And so I found on the first try, where I just copied in the path of the destructibles into the chomper test to see if that would work, it would break the box and then just sit there because the box still existed to the test. And looking at the scene, I could see that the box wasn't destroyed. It was still sitting there, or it was still present in the scene, even though it was inactive. So now I actually have to test, is the box active? Actually, if the box is inactive, so we're going to set this to true. So we want to make sure that the box is, if the box is true, or if the box is active, then destroy it. And then we're actually decrementing that count, because I can't depend on the next box being, the right one in the list. We actually have to look at the whole list, start at the end, and work our way backwards. Anyway, I'm expecting this one to fail because I'm still working on it, but let's take a look at the full set of tests. And I'm just going to clean this so I can see a nice clean log here, although it's just my personal neuroses. And let's hit play. Right, so hands off keys. And now I'm running the test. It's going to connect from the client to the GameDriver agent. You can see up in the corner here, client connections equals 1. And that's the GameDriver overlay telling us what's happening during the test. And now it's going to, do the movement test, just like I said. Move around the ship a bit. Test, did we move? Yes. Does the camera move? Yes. Pop up the menu. That works. And get the weapon. So he teleported Ellen into the weapon, and now kill everything sets off. And this is kind of fun to watch, because as we're doing this, the chompers are reacting. They're actually trying to get me, and in some cases I'll teleport out before the chomper has a chance. Sometimes it'll get me, sometimes it won't. In other cases, I'm teleporting again before the chomper has destroyed itself in the scene. And I'll just expand the scene here so you can see what's happening. And so there's a couple of neat things going on here. We've got destructibles and then enemies, and the number of enemies is going to decrease over time. In this case, I died. I actually died, but the game just respawns you. And so in a couple of cases, I'm actually teleporting near the chomper, and then it disappears, so it teleports again and again, and that's fine. We can just let this run. I've watched this a couple of times where it just kind of goes and goes and goes. But what we do see here is the chompers disappearing, which is great. That's what we want. But a neat bug here is that these death sources increases over time, and I'm not sure what these are. These are the chomper's audio source, where it died, I guess, is not being cleaned up. In fact, I would expect that these would be created to create the audio source where the chomper died and then disappear. And look at that. I've teleported out of the scene, which is going to cause a problem. This happens. There's a chomper that is below the zone here, so there's actually a bigger problem than even just the death source, audio source is not destroying after the chomper's gone. There's a hole in the game because the chomper fell through it. It's fine that I teleport through it, and that's almost to be expected. But what work here is that the chomper somehow found its way through the zone. So let's stop this. You can watch Ellen flounder for forever trying to get there, but we basically got the test. Sometimes this works 100%, sometimes it doesn't. And there's probably some things we can do to make sure that it's, we're testing for that. Like testing, for example, is the chomper outside of the playable space, or is the chomper on a nav mesh? There's different ways that we could test that to make sure that we're teleporting our character to a valid chomper that's above the scene, or even counting, are there chompers that are outside of the playable space in some way? That is another valid test. So while I have this open, let's try this break all boxes thing again. And I'm fully expecting this to fail because I'm still debugging it. But like I said, I've separated the functionality in each of these tests so that I can just run it by itself, and hopefully, no, didn't happen. Let's see what that looks like, because sometimes looking at error logs tells us everything that we need to know. So I'm actually onto the right path here. You can see from the log, and I'll try and blow this up here, that the destructible box in this case is instance number 23 of the destructible box. And so I'll play this in a second, just to look through these logs for a second. So I was looking for a destructible box with 23, and that wasn't found. But it does tell me that I'm starting in the right place, which is this high number, because I'm looking for a total of 44. I think I know what's happening here is it's actually divided by 2 minus 1. And this is just funny math, right? So let's do divided by 2 minus 1, where we're taking the whole number and understanding that the integer started at 0. Simple workaround. We're going to divide it by 2, subtract 1, and that's going to give us the child of the box that we want, which in this case should be 44, right? So the child of that should be 22, and checking that it's active. So let's run this one more time, and so I can just hit play here. It's going to do that whole setup again, but it's going to skip all those other tests that we ran, because this is the part that I'm now focusing on. It's just this break all boxes piece. No, it didn't work. Okay. Argument called the method. Okay, this is actually a different problem. And so I'll talk through this as we look at it. Coming back to this set, can attack did not have an argument. And that's actually the reason why I started hit recording here. So this is call method. Call method is going to take a hierarchy path to an object, and then its method name, right? In this case, the set can attack is part of the player controller, and I can show you that in action. Let's open it up here. And so we have the GameDriver Object Explorer, which is going to allow me to identify this. So I don't have to go digging through code, but I probably will go digging through code just because I want to see the arguments. It is a void, it's not expecting any return value, but let's look at Ellen in the Object Explorer. And so we have the components, and the player controller is what I'm looking at here. And then there's a method attached to this, which is set can attack, system boolean set can attack. And so I'll come back to this, and we're going to pass it a value here, which is once again we're looking at object arguments. And so we're going to say new. We can say object through. And I'm going to take this as well. Copy it to the chomper test, because I'm fairly confident this is what's needed. And so let's run this again. And what failed there is that it couldn't find, or it couldn't execute the method attached to that component because it required an argument and I didn't provide one. Okay. So it appears failed to resolve object hierarchy path destructible box 46. Let's take a look. In the destructibles, we have all of these destructible boxes. And as I described earlier, there's a bit of a problem here. We've got destructible box with a child of destructible box. So if I look at the first one, say hierarchy path relative is destructible box. If I look at the next one, hierarchy path relative is destructible box 1. So what I wanted here was the bottom of this list, because remember, these are not going to destroy themselves when I destroy the boxes. So I need to start at the end and work my way back, because unlike the chompers, the list isn't going to get smaller as I go. So I want this one. If I'm looking at the inspector, this has, realistic positional values, whereas the one below it does not. It's going to have a relative value to that of its parent. And so destructible box, hierarchy path, relative is 44. And then the one beneath that should be relative 45, but this is the one that's going to be, this is going to go inactive when the box is destroyed. So let's do the hierarchy path of absolute and name only, which is how I'm calling the, where I'm checking the field of it is active. And you can see we've got 44 for the box that I want to destroy and 22 for its child using this full path, right? So this was my logic. I'm first checking, is the child count the full list divided by 2, take away 1, which before showed us 23, so that take away 1 should have given us 22. This seems to have passed. The next one did not, and it said that it's looking for 46. And I'm not quite sure why that is, but without digging too much into it, what we could do is just assume that that's going to be true for all of them, right? Let's give this a try. The destination, the target. We're going to move L into the close to the object, which is right beside the box, and then we're going to move L into that position, and then we're going to hit the fire button. Let's see what happens this time. Right, so we're still connected. Going to hit run. We can see that connection again in the GameDriver overlay. Hey, look at that. And now we're iterating through the boxes in the game, going backwards. And as this is happening, you can see that the number of boxes doesn't change, but the child box becomes inactive. Whereas the ones up here at the beginning, the child box is still active, and we'll be able to watch this happen. Where this last box, or the first box, the child will disappear. What's that I hear? I hear the chomper down below. So there's still a chomper running around. That's fine. I'm not too worried about that. There's a chomper. There's a couple of chompers. Oh, because we didn't actually run the kill all chompers in this one. So that's funny. I was trying to run around breaking boxes while the chompers was still running around. So that's the way it goes. But in this case, we actually succeeded. We were able to run the test where we checked the total number of chompers, the total number of boxes, and then we're going to teleport, make sure that those things are breaking. And as they were breaking the boxes, they were becoming inactive. Not destroying themselves, but inactive. The next steps for me to automate this test are to look for the interactables. And in this case, everything's stored under level 1 gameplay objects. So I'll just jump into it here. This video has gotten quite long, so I'm not gonna capture all of this. But my next steps, now that I know the basic functionality is there, is to go through this gameplay. And I've already gotten the weapon. I'm gonna now do things like switches and crystals. Now the neat thing about switches is that, okay, maybe I should break all boxes after the switches, because the goal is actually to move the boxes over to, I think it's pressure pads or switches, one of the two. And so we actually need some of these boxes. And so maybe that's why they don't destroy. I don't know, maybe they come back after a certain amount of time. Maybe they respawn, which would make sense with the whole destructibles thing. And I can probably pretty easily check that looking through each of them here. But if it's destructible, and then there's like a respawn rate or something. But my next step would be to go in and flick the switches, get the crystals, go to the huge door, fight the boss, whatever the case is there, maybe check the health crates, all of these things to make sure that all of the interactable, the movements, the scenes, the different triggers inside of the game or level are functioning correctly. That way, as a tester, when I pick this up, I can do, you know, the important thing, which is this fun? Is this working in the way that the developers intended? Sure, it might all functionally be working, and that's great. You want to have that checkbox. But at the end of the day, what's important to the game and to the designers is this game fun to play? And so by automating all of these things, I can get that off my plate. I don't have to worry about it. Every time I pick up a build of this game, I can focus on the more interesting aspects of it. Is it too challenging? Am I getting one shot by the boss? That sort of thing. And so that's why we do automated testing. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon.